Yeah, so I appreciate your attitude there. That's conciliant with mine. And this whole all explains why I'm interested in the intelligent design debate, because even though I'm an atheist, I'm not absolutely certain of my atheism. I think that one can call oneself an atheist without being like absolutely dogmatic, without being willing to bet one's life for a penny that atheism is true. Just as I know theists who have doubts. Mother Teresa had doubts.
Mm-hmm.
Al Plantinga, who's a friend of mine, and as people probably know, a famous Christian philosopher, he has doubts sometimes. But these people are still theists, and the atheists can similarly believe that God doesn't exist without being absolutely certain that God doesn't exist.
What do you think happens when a person tries to pretend that there is no reason or room for any doubt or self-introspection in their worldview?
Yeah, this is where I think that leads to dogmatism in part, and this sort of emotional reaction to the people who are on the other side. Because if you think that the other side is just completely, has nothing going for it, then you're going to, dismiss them and react badly to them. And it's unfortunate, and I appreciate the people who aren't that way. And unfortunately, what I've been encountering lately are more atheists who seem to be completely incredibly dogmatic about their view, and then, at least in my personal experience, I've been encountering Christians who are more sympathetic. Like I recently came across, for example, William Lane Craig, and he has a Q&A section on his web page, where he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he basically said, it was question number 72, if you want to look it up. He basically said, atheism is not an implausible worldview. So this is, Craig, one of the preeminent Christian apologists, saying atheism is not an implausible worldview. But then his reason for saying that is he was saying, so that doesn't explain why these atheists are giving such bad arguments and being so emotional about it. They should be able to just give, plausible arguments for atheism, but in fact they're not. They're getting, all upset and not giving arguments.
I find your perspective very interesting, Professor Monton. I'm interested in this debate. I'm supposed to be interviewing you, but you've just really sparked my interest here. I'm interested in this debate on many levels. One is just because I personally consider myself a person who is seeking truth and is trying to understand what is the nature of reality. And then as well, I'm interested also in just people and the way that we're built, the way that we approach these kind of issues. And having been on the receiving end of a lot of what you might call the dogmatic name calling that's out there, I think about that kind of stuff and I wonder what drives it, what causes it, why do people get so angry? I wrote a blog post earlier this year about how Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss were just really, they had this sort of hate fest on religion where I watched them speak at Stanford back in March, and I said, in many ways, they're coming to resemble the very thing that they claim they hate. And, it saddens me because I love a good introspective dialogue and discussion and debate with anybody of any viewpoint. And so that's why, whether they agree with ID or they don't, and when it turns into dogmatism and name calling, it just saddens me. I think that the debate could be so much more interesting and so much more life-giving than that.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And you could sort of understand why scientists maybe are that way, at least if you have like the Kuhnian view that there are paradigms and people are practicing normal science. Then within normal science nowadays, it's not appropriate to consider supernatural hypotheses or even the sorts of design hypotheses that the intelligent design people want folks to consider. But within philosophy, philosophers are used to talking about arguments for and against the existence of God. And it's kind of, it's sort of one of the paradigm issues that philosophers talk about. And so it really surprises me when I get philosophers who are being dogmatic and opposed to me talking about these issues.
Professor Monton, is there anything else you'd like to add just as we close out this first interview?
Yeah, we were in the topic of reactions, the negative reactions I've gotten for trying to discuss these intelligent design issues in a dispassionate, objective manner. I thought it might be interesting to read part of an email I got from a prominent intelligent design proponent. And I'm not going to mention his name.
Proponent or opponent?
Prominent intelligent design opponent.
Opponent, okay.
Opponent, right. And I'm not going to mention his name just because it doesn't really matter
who
he is. What's interesting is the attitude that's expressed. So he says, unfortunately, so he read an early draft of my manuscript on intelligent design issues, which we can talk more about. And here's what he said. Unfortunately, in this debate, a position between two sides, which you seem to adopt, is hardly tenable. It is a cultural war whose outcome will have immense consequences. So a book, to be useful, must unequivocally take a side and defend it vigorously. A position of supposed impartiality, which is hardly possible, necessarily serves one side, despite the author's intention to remain unbiased. And I was really disappointed when I got this idea that I have to be on one side or the other, that this is a cultural war, and one can't take any side other than one of the two sides cultural war. That really disappointed me because I'm not working on intelligent design issues to be useful. I'm not working on intelligent design issues to fight a cultural war, even if there is a cultural war, which we can talk about. I'm talking about these intelligent design issues, and I'm thinking about these because I want to get at the truth. I want to know, or at least even if I can't get at the truth, I want to know where the arguments best point. So, I'm not interested in taking one side and defending it vigorously. I'm interested in espousing what I think the right position is. And if I think the right position is somewhere in between, then that's what I'm going to say.
Well, I appreciate your perspective very much, Professor Monton. Us folks who have been involved with the legal field have a term for that kind of thinking, that the quote that you just read, it's called outcome-based jurisprudence, where people don't care about the logic or the reasoning that you use to get to your conclusion. They just care about your conclusion, that it's the quote-unquote politically correct, accurate conclusion as far as their own goals and agenda is concerned. Good reasoning and logic and truth are not of primary concern when you do that kind of reasoning. So
right.
In any case, we're going to pick this up in another podcast, talk some more about your own research and the book that you're writing, and maybe even get back into the question of responses to your work and your perspective on those kind of things. So thank you so much, Professor Monton, for this interview.
Thanks, Casey.